Welcome, everyone, to the Non-Duality Living Cafe, where we will have non-dual explorations of what is in everyday living. James and I will have special guests every 2 weeks or so. And the first guest today is Chaitanya Peter Cutler. James, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just to welcome you as co-hosts of this delightful forum, and to invite all you to show your hand if you have a comment that you would like to make. We would like for you to participate as much as you would like to. With that, we'll just launch with Peter. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. My mic is on. Good, good. I thought we would begin with something that that is done in all Zen monasteries, which is the sound of the bell. I have a nice temple bell here, and I will sound that in a moment. And why we do this is because the bell rings out for a while, and then it slowly drifts into silence. So what we're really looking for is not really the sound of the bell, it's the silence that it leads into. And so if you listen to that, it leads into that place. And if you can, notice that while the bell is sounding, the silence is still there. The sound comes from silence, and silence exists while the sound is sounding, and then the sound returns to silence. So silence is there the whole time. And the bell is kind of a reminder of that. Even though it's a sound, it's a reminder of silence. So see if you can notice that. Feel if you can notice that. Depending on how good your ears are, you'll hear it ringing for a longer or shorter time. And Thich Nhat Hanh had a wonderful way of expressing this. He said, we don't ring the bell, we invite the bell to sound. We invite it to sound, which sounds more like we're inviting it to sound from silence. We're inviting this thing to silence, and then this sound to arise in silence, and then slowly return to silence again. So I'll ring it one more time. And see if you can really feel this. Focus on, close your eyes and just feel it. These big bells have a lot of harmonics in them, so there's more than one sound going, more than one tone is happening at the same time. And that's why you sometimes hear that wah, 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 wah thing. It's like there's multiple tones happening at the same time. And some of them are wowing against each other. In vocal training, they call those beats. When you're not right on pitch, there's a beat that happens, this wah, wah, wah thing as you get closer to it. But this silence, what we were going to talk about today, which has been a big interest of mine ever since this thing happens by itself, is how do you live like this, without a self? In this non-dual thing, how do you be in this world of duality where all this myriad things are going on, and be in this non-dual space, which is the silence and stillness, the peace, the bliss of our true nature? How do you live in a dream from this place? So that was a bit of a conundrum for me. And I thought, that was a very strong interest of mine. So I called my website Living Awake, because that was my curiosity. How do you live awake in the world of illusion? And it turns out there was no reason to even ask. Because this does fine without any thinking or planning or doing anything. Just like the silence does fine. Is the sound of the bell disturbing the silence? Is it affecting the silence? Not at all. Not in any way at all. The silence remains exactly as it is. Doesn't matter what sounds happen. It could be traffic sounds, a jackhammer, fingernails scraping on a blackboard, annoying sounds, beautiful sounds. It doesn't make any difference. They don't have any effect on silence. Silence remains always as it is. And there's one of the most wonderful sentences that I've ever read, which is in the beginning of Papaji's book, of one of his books. It's nothing has ever happened. And I just found that when I first heard it really striking, like, what do you mean? Look at all this. But it's true. Nothing has ever happened. Because this true nature of what we are is totally unaffected by any of this. This is a dream. Just as we're unaffected by our sleeping dreams. What happens in our sleeping dream is, while we're dreaming, it could be very traumatic or exciting or anything. I can fly. This is really fun. But when we wake up, that's all gone. It never really existed. It just existed in our thoughts. The environment. Dreams are a wonderful thing not to psychoanalyze the way Jung would do. It's fine if you want to play around with that, but the real value of dreams is it points to this waking life. Every night it points to this waking life. Was that dream real? It seemed real, and the person experiencing the dream seemed absolutely real. And the traumatic events that were happening were like, traumatic, this is terrible, or exciting or wonderful, whatever it is in the dream. But when we wake up from the dream, we realize it never happened. The person who was experiencing the dream never happened. The objects in the dream never happened. The people in the dream never happened. The events in the dream never happened. It was just a dream that seemed very real. And this waking dream is like that. Like that. Philo, did you have a question, or were you just
Not a
saying
question,
hello?
more a comment on
Yeah, a comment.
what you're speaking on, because that's something that I use a lot, the dream analogy. And people think that, well, that's not very practical. but in fact, it's incredibly practical to think about one's life that way, because you actually begin to see how everything in the waking life is as ungraspable as any dream, and that things arise and disappear just like in a dream. And so one can think about suffering as that also. Suffering, when it arises, is very real for us as humans.
If it's suffering, it's real to us because we're suffering. If it's not real, where's the suffering? Yeah,
Exactly. So, but to know that it's transitory, just like everything else, is a way to mitigate some of that. To see it as dream is a way to mitigate the suffering, especially what we see that's more abstract. When we watch TV and we see suffering, we can suffer with those people and at the same time understand that it's dream. Both can happen at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same time. It's like when I work with people, often people come with suffering, that they've had for many years, their lifetime, suffering. And I see at one point their true nature, which has never been touched by suffering and never suffered, and suffering doesn't exist at all. And I see that their belief in the suffering, it does exist. It exists in their dream, and they feel it, and I feel it. I feel their suffering from the illusion, but at the same time, I feel that suffering doesn't exist and nothing has ever happened. And that means that whatever they bring to me, whatever I experience from them, is never overwhelming to me. And some of it is amazing to me, because things that would have overwhelmed me before, and go, I can't deal with that. I had one person that had multiple personalities, and they would just spring up right in front of me, like one after another. It was so fast, and they were so thorough that literally everything about him changed. It was like what you read about, or in Sybil, in the book Sybil. It was these things would happen, and his whole environment would just instantly change into something else. He would literally look like a different person over and over and over again. This would happen. And that would have freaked me out. When I read the book Sybil when I was a teenager, I thought, like, wow, that would be really hard to experience. I wouldn't want to be with someone where this is happening. How would I deal with it? And in fact, it wasn't a problem. I could just be there for all those changes, which other people couldn't. The psychiatrists and people that I saw, they were like, we need to get you some medication right away, because they couldn't deal with this going on. So they wanted to change him. And I just was there for it. I just accepted all of it. And from that, I saw the source of it. I saw where it was coming from, and that was a long process to deal with it, where it was coming from, because he was like extraordinarily sensitive to everything, so that the slightest discomfort he would escape from it. It was too much, like, oh, there's a mosquito, I got to get out of here, things that we wouldn't really, well, maybe a mosquito would bother us, but maybe the feeling of air on our skin or something, well, that wouldn't bother us. That's just there. But he was sensitive to things like that. The most normal little things were too much. So he had to, anyways, to go into his story, but it was because I could see the true nature at the same time, the same in everyone, as well as all these things that come from this belief in a separate person, the dream, all these incredible things that happen in this dream, which, just like when we're watching a movie, they're, wonderful things, good things, horrible things, it's all variety of things. But when we see the true nature of what's here, feel it, when we feel the true nature of what's here as one, there is just this extraordinary peace, bliss, and love. Why? I don't know. It's just like this. It's just like this. Like before this meeting, every morning, I go out in my little garden. It has a small lawn, which I can walk on barefoot. And I've gotten so I not just walk on it, but I crawl on it. I get down really close to the earth, really close to the grass. I do, sun salutation, and my face is like pressed right into the ground, so I'm really absorbing and breathing in all those microbacteria, and communicating in this way. And as I'm so close to it, I see the non-dual aspect of it, that it's all this one, all the insects there, the grass, the grass that's, old grass that's sort of dying and becoming mulch, and the new grass on top of that, and this enormous variety of insects crawling and flying. I mean, there's hundreds of different varieties there. When you're really close to it, you see so much that's there, and it's all this one. It's all this one appearing as all these different things. And nature is wonderful in that way, because nature never says, no, I'm not. Yes, the insect feels it's an insect and it should fly, or it should bite you, it should get blood from you, or it should do something, explore you. But it doesn't really deny, it doesn't really blatantly, strongly deny that it's one, that it's God, that it's the self. It allows you to be with that without it saying no, whereas people often do. They're very insistent that they're a separate person and they should be treated as a separate person. That's one of the challenges of living in this way, is people strongly want to be seen as a person, as something that's separate, individual, and unique. And that's a denial of their true nature. And that's sort of the whole thing, isn't it? That's where all suffering comes from. All suffering comes from this, all of it. We think it's like, yeah, well, I was in an accident and I lost my legs. Of course I'm suffering. Or my child died, or, I just got divorced, or I was fired, or whatever the situation is. That's why I'm suffering. But that's not. The situations don't actually have anything to do with it. It's that sense of a personal self. Because when we're completely fine, no trauma is going on, things are going really well, I'm just getting married, this is all good, I'm feeling wonderful relative to all the other times, that sense of a separate self is still suffering. And this is what in Buddhism the Buddha called dukkha. So dukkha is not this extreme suffering, like I just lost my child or something. It's not that. It's dissatisfaction. It's this little thing that I'm still looking. I'm still seeking something. There's something that just isn't quite perfect yet. It's just not quite. I'm getting married, but if I'm quiet for a moment and get over the excitement, it's like there's still something missing. There's still something that isn't quite right. And dukkha was described as a wagon wheel that isn't quite perfectly round. It's just making a little hitch every once in a while. It's just not quite perfect. There's still some seeking. Things could get better. And in this non-dual experience, there isn't anything like that. It is perfect. There isn't any seeking. It is already as it is. And that as it isness, that beingness is perfect. And once that sense of the separate person is gone, then this all opens up. It just opens up. It's always been open. It's one of the amazing things about awakening to this, is the realization that this has always been here the whole time. I was seeking so hard and doing so much to try and experience this, or what awakening is, or what non-duality is. I was doing, I had all the practices to do that for lifetimes. And it was always here. It was always here the entire time I was seeking. I was never not this. Philo, you have another comment?
A question.
A question, okay.
Yeah, because so I'm going to assume that all of us here have that understanding. And I'm going to assume also that we are in direct relationship with people that do not have this understanding and are coming from the sense of a separate self. And that's not to be denied either. I mean, that's how they're feeling in that moment.
Mm.
So how do we, or how do you work with that without imposing ideas or our understandings on others? How do we work with the separate person who's having a hard time with us? I'm referring to something, I'm thinking about something at my job, but in general, there's that can arise. How do you deal with that?
Love. Love. Just unconditional love, because that's part of this, right? Since everything is this, it's not like it loves itself, right? Because that would be two, that would be dual. It's not dual. It is love. So it's love without subject or object. It's the essence of what we experience as love. It's the essence of that, of love. So everything is experienced as that. This is the same as when I'm on the grass with the insects. It's just love. There's an insect that I know will bite me and leave a mark and some itching after a while. What's my experience? Love. Just love, because it's all this. This is how it sees. And this gets really to some of the point of how do we live in the world of duality. The being takes care of it. The beingness, the what is, takes care of it by itself. It was my struggles to figure out how to live like this where it wasn't even really a question. There was no need to even ask. Being takes care of it. And through love, right? When you love, you somehow we understand, because in this being, in this pure being, there is this infinite knowing. It's just vastly more than the mind can possibly even comprehend or come close to it. All the knowledge of humanity throughout time doesn't even begin to approach to the tiniest percent of this knowing. So we trust this and we don't trust this. This is fine. This is limited. This is wonderful for what it can do, but it can't understand truth. It can't understand non-duality. It can't understand reality. It can't understand what it is. It really doesn't understand much. So this is when we say, I know nothing. We're talking about the mind. The mind doesn't really know anything of true value or truth. But this does. What we feel through love, there's this great knowing in love too, if we really want to sink deeply into it, let go into it. There's this knowing there. So how do we deal with individual people like that? We don't, when we feel we're having a problem, that's our mind speaking, right? When we sink into this being, we realize there are no problems, and yet there's something in this moment to do. Some action comes forward. Sometimes it's often, and not sometimes, it's almost always a complete surprise to our mind why we would do something like this. My youngest daughter, my kids are all adults now, but my youngest daughter was spoiled, I have to admit, by my wife and I. It was a second marriage, and she was our only child, and we had twins. Both of us had twins before. And so we spoiled her, you know. We said, oh, we can give all this love to just one now. And so we went for it. And as a result, she was became quite spoiled and sort of, you know, well, spoiled and selfish in a way. And I would never say that to her. I adored her. And one time she was doing something and sort of apologizing for it, which had a negative consequence on me. And 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 basically after she was, you know, saying like, well, this is why I'm doing it, because I have to meet my friends and this, and I'm sorry if this, you know, ruins your plans and upsets what you're doing and is an imposition on you. And I said, it's okay, honey. You're just very selfish. And the words came out of my mouth and my mind was going like, what? What did you just say? You don't say this to your youngest child who you love. You don't say that to her. And it shocked her. She was like, what? He's saying that to me. He adores me. He's only saying wonderful things about me. And here he says I'm very selfish, but in a loving way. And it changed her. She became less selfish with her friends and other people. A lot of problems that she had because of that ended. So it was exactly the right thing to say. But did I, as a person, say it? I would never say that. No, this being said it. It needed to be said. And so it was. And so somehow I trust this. And it's taught me to trust this. Oh, I'm as skeptical or was as skeptical as a person as anybody, more so probably than most people. And yet this proved to me that I could trust this in so many ways, so many ways. The thing that I was most afraid of, you know, throughout my life, other than death, was public speaking, was speaking in front of people. It just terrified me because I had to make speeches in school and it was like just very stressful and I really was terrified of it. So I found myself at a retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh, one of my early retreats with him. And a friend of mine was going to be given the teaching, the lamp of transmission, the teaching, and had to go speak to Thich Nhat Hanh right away. And she was scheduled to go on the stage and make a presentation, a speech. So she said, can you do it for me? And because at that point in the retreats, I would just say yes to everything. I was just part of the Sangha. I wasn't a separate person. I'd just say yes, 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 yes. I didn't think about it. Just love and yes. So I said yes. And then I realized, oh, this is the thing I'm most terrified of. And I have no idea what to say. And that's the way it was. You know, she gave me some notes of her life or talking about it. And I said, that's not going to work. I can't do that. I said, something will come to me. I have faith that something will come to me. So I go up. I'm the third person in line to speak. Other people go before. And I think, yeah, while they're speaking, something will come. Something will come. And then the second person speaks and something will come. And then it's my turn. Nothing has come. I have nothing to say. And there's like 2,000 people in the audience. I have nothing to say. And I don't want to be excommunicated from the Sangha for being an idiot and standing up there or embarrassed. But because it had already happened, my worst fear had already happened. It was like the most nightmare you would have in your dream. And here I was there. Okay, it happened. Then the fear goes away because there's nothing more to fear. The thing you were afraid of is right there. You're living it. So there's nothing to be afraid of because it's already happened. So there was no fear, but I still didn't know what to say. And somehow I could feel these questions coming from certain people in the audience, that they would have a strong question, a very, very, something that really meant a lot to them, like a driving question that they would have. And one person, I remember, was over in one part of the audience, a male, and then there was a woman over on the other side, and she had a question, and then a third question came up. So I guess I answered those questions. That's all. And afterwards, people said, you're amazing. Like, I never knew you could do that. You could speak like that. Did I? I had no idea either. And then, I said, well, if it's so amazing, they were videoing it. I'm going to get the video and then I'm going to practice what I said so I can do that the next time. I'll just take what it is and learn how to do that. And it turned out that the camera right before I went on stopped working and they had to get another camera and they missed the whole thing. So I had no idea what I said. And then my second thought was, well, I'm going to go and ask people why they thought it was so wonderful. So I asked people, why did you think this was so good? What was it about it that you liked? And everybody had a completely different answer. There was no way to put it together about what it was. But it taught me, like, there's something here that's not me as a person. The person who's afraid, like, 10-year-old boy is afraid to make a speech. There's something that's not that's up there. I don't know what it is, but it comes forward and does that. And that experience allowed me to do that again and again and again. And each time it was the same. Something just comes through somehow. And I moved here to Sedona, where I live now. Why? I had no idea about what Sedona was, but I felt this inner calling to come to this place that I knew nothing about, leave my family, my Sangha, all my friends, everything I knew, to go to a place where I knew nobody and nothing. And in my mind, I thought it was like the Sahara Desert. It says desert, all I know is desert, Sahara Desert, sand. So that's what I thought Sedona was. I said, why would I want to go there? There's like all this sand, but there's no ocean. There's no, it's an endless beach with no water. Why do I want to go there? But it wouldn't leave me alone. I just felt this desire. So finally I gave in and I said, I'm going to go see why I'm supposed to go there. What is it about it? And it turned out that this is where I was supposed to be. And I couldn't have known that. How does this know these things? Filo, yes.
I want to talk about that a little bit, and then maybe open it up to the group to, if they have any thoughts, feelings, observations, questions about that. So
Yeah.
for me, what arises, like, the understanding comes and is fixed in being, but the
I'm sorry,
person,
again.
the understanding can come, and for me it feels like it's fixed in the in being. It's not an understanding that comes and goes.
Mm.
And but the for me at least, the person Philo is still here, and the understanding is that Philo and everyone else are going to continue being what that is. So in other words, the understanding doesn't necessarily change the person. It can do.
Mm.
It can do in quieter moments, but in the heat of the moment, there may be a reaction. Philo may react to something, for instance, that doesn't look non-dual from the outside. Okay, so I just want to impress the point that this non-duality understanding and I'm using the words loosely here for communication, but it's an internal understanding. It's not something that looks different on the outside. Because I think there's an expectation from people that when one has the understanding, that you're supposed to be this good person, this loving, perfect person. And that's not the case at all. It can be the case, but it's not often the case.
Mm.
And even within oneself, there can be a thought arising, questioning the person and what's the person doing. All of that can still be happening. And now it's happening and it's being seen as it happens. And that's where the understanding is seated itself, in the seeing of whatever is arising, whether it's Philo being upset or Philo being happy, the person opposite Philo being upset or happy. All of that is now just part of the vista, so to speak. And there's a kind of just an understanding that the identification that was there previously is no longer there. And it's the identification, I think, with what happens that determines whether one has understood or not. If one has the understanding, and that understanding allows one not to identify with whatever the person is doing, then that's a pretty good indication that one is separating from the person, seeing the person as doing that, and seeing that as natural and normal and what happens.
Yeah. No, I agree. Ramana Maharshi was asked once, like, so why is there a body then after you don't experience that? Very awake presence, Ramana is. And he said, it's like the blades of a fan. When you unplug the fan, the blades keep turning. They keep going. The stream keeps going because sometimes it's surprising that there's a body, honestly. But the dream keeps going. It's different in that from our sleeping dream. There's a number of differences, but that's one of them. In our sleeping dream, we wake up, the dream's gone. But in this one, we wake up and the dream keeps going. It's just that we're not really part of it anymore. We're not attached to it. We're not really, nothing is happening here. And the dream, all these things still appear to be happening, but we don't have an identification, as Philo said. We don't have that connection. It's like when we're watching a movie, right? If it's a good movie, we're very involved in that movie, right? We suspend disbelief and we are the characters there. And if they're in jeopardy, it's like, no, don't go into that dark room or whatever it is. Or oh, they need to get together. They're so much in love, all these problems. Oh, this is so unfair that this came up. We're really invested in it. And that's a good movie, right? If we see it as a movie, it's just a movie. And maybe I was a filmmaker, so maybe you can see the microphone is hanging in the shot or something, or something happens, the acting isn't very good, or it's like it's a comedy and you know what the joke is going to be before it's said. You just know it's not funny, right? And you're just not involved, and you think, oh, that was a waste of money or time to see that. That was like totally nothing. It isn't really the same for this experience because we love all this stuff happening in the dream because it is a dream, because there is the underlying reality. That's why we love it. So when we, unlike before as an artist, I would look at in my garden, like when the roses come up, it's like, yeah, this is great. The roses have come up. Oh, they're so beautiful. And now when I look, it's like, it's all the self and it's beautiful. It's even more beautiful, but it's not a rose anymore, right? It's the self. And as an artist, I kind of wanted it to be this, a rose. I wanted to see, like, how am I going to photograph this? How am I going to make something out of this? Because it's the same, the rose and the wall behind it and the ground and the sun and the looker, the one that's seeing it. It's all the same one. And it's beautiful in that way. It's more beautiful, but it's not the same. So for a while I missed that. And I thought, like, as an artist, what am I, is this the end of my doing any of that? No, because everything that I had done before was somehow that I was seeing that. I was seeing that without knowing it. And that's why the photographs and the art was so successful, because other people would see it too, somehow, without knowing what they're seeing. But the dream keeps going. And that's fine that the dream keeps going. I will say that in this life, there have been changes to this body-mind vehicle in that it's not stressed anymore. It doesn't get stressed because it doesn't have the identification. There's a sense of peace, a sense of somehow perfection of everything, and an understanding when things happen in politics and things that used to get me very upset. There's an underlying understanding of why it's all happening somehow. I don't even know. And it's not necessarily something that I can put into thoughts or words, although I try, at times, but it's deeper than that. It's more of a feeling, more of a sense of being. That's the funny thing, because being is like such a small word to the mind, but actually it's everything. This that creates the dream universes and all this is being. And it's being that creates it. It doesn't create the way we think of creation, like I'm in a plan on this, or this would be good to do that. The being alone. And this is why when we act from being, as being, the actions just come. They don't come with any intention or plan. They just arise from being. They just happen. And that's hard at first to accept that. But when we do, in my experience, it makes a much better life, for this body mind. It's infinitely more pleasurable, infinitely more being, that there isn't so much effort, there isn't so much working, planning, stressing. There isn't really anything to stress about. Occasionally, maybe it might stress, the body might stress, and it doesn't really go to the self-identification like it used to, but it did. It went what I call a roller coaster. Many, many, many years since I was in my early 20s when these awakenings would happen. There was a roller coaster thing where I would have this awakening and try and figure it out, which would plunge me back into identification with the mind and the person again, and I would lose whatever that was over and over and over and over again for most of my life.
James,
So,
did you have a thought? I can see you raising.
oh, James,
Yes,
yeah.
but okay. Peter, thank you. I mean, you're you come from being and you express it so beautifully and you live it. And this is what we're about in terms of what we want to format with this kind of a forum. I had a little wonder about separation and how we deal with the illusion of separation. In other words, part of the person, the personal relationships we have, quote, with people to people, the separation, the recognition of separation can seem to be lost. In other words, you have to enter into the world of belief and problems and vexatious living and anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. And I know, Peter, I saw you make a comment on one of your writings that you don't see people so much and you don't interface as much with people, maybe in this respect. And I don't, did you have a comment on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, in people who are engaging very much in a working life and relationships and marriages and all that stuff like that. I live as a monk, right? And that was intentional. And I was in relationships. I have kids. I was married and had all that. And that was an incredibly a wonderful experience and learning experience and everything. Very, very valuable.
Yeah.
But I made a choice to live as as a monk, and not only as a monk, but not as part of in a monastery of a sangha with people, but mostly in silence, mostly as a hermit, basically, more or less. And I have spent over a year living completely in silence without any contact with people at all, and for 6 years, every 3 months I would come back into this silence, even when I was in a relationship with a partner, with a woman, and said I just felt it wasn't even my own sort of personal intention because it was very inconvenient to do it, but I just felt pulled into it, like coming to Sedona. I just felt called into it, and I couldn't resist it. At some point, I can't resist the inner calling to do these things. So I would say, I'm sorry, I have to go into silence for 3 months. And I remember one woman said, like, well, can I call you? And I said, no, that's not the point. And after a while, I felt it's not fair for me to be in relationship with people if this is going to go on like this. So, I stopped. And that's when I became a monk then,
Thank
from
you for that,
so
Peter. Thank you so
these
much.
are over. So
I'd like to.
it's different. It's a different, thing. And it's like people would say, they go to Thich Nhat Hanh and said, we need advice on marriage. And he said, why would you ask me? I'm a monk.
Okay, we've got about half an hour left. And I would like to invite anybody who's got that back of their mind reoccurring thought, comment, question to perhaps maybe this might be a good time and place to speak up. I could prod James. I kind of want to prod him a little. James Hartland, that is. I read your writing. It's lovely. I thank you for it. Oh, mute. Can we put you off mute? Can we get James on there?
You
Sorry,
should be able
James.
to unmute.
He's still on mute. Can you hit your button, James?
Mute me. Can you
There
hear
you
me?
go. Oh,
Okay.
hallelujah, hallelujah.
Well, this is good. I'm reminded that each of us who are sincere and honest with ourselves, we each have our own unique but valid path, as it were, to the mystery. This instant. I want to meet the one who can only live in this instant as unconditional love, self-aware, unconditional goodness, consciously. I know you're there.
Mhm.
James, is that a person? Or what are you referring to there?
Peter knows what I'm saying.
Just for clarity.
You, the nameless, causeless, timeless presence that doesn't come or go or change, that's self-aware right now. You. And you've always known it. Don't tell me you haven't known this and this is something new to you. You've known it the whole time. You know it right now. You. Not the name, not the personal history, the one who's only right here, looking from here, knowing as unknowing presence. The familiarity of complete unknowing presence is a kind of knowing. It's familiar and it's unknowing at the same time. Right now, this instant.
Unknowing and all-knowing.
Well, yeah, but only in the sense of what can't be expressed, yes?
Yeah. Yeah. We get little kind of little nuggets, little things that occasionally pop up into the mind that are like, scratching like a tiny bit of ice off the top of an iceberg. That's how much we
Yeah.
can, if we can get anything like that.
Well, if I call myself, if I by I mean the thinker, knower, believer, doer, judge, etc., I can never know. I am this conditioned dead end,
Yeah.
walking around with my eyes open.
Yeah.
But like you said, Peter, there's this love, we'll call it love, and this love has eyes to see, and this love has a voice to speak, and this love has a body to sense. Why? Well,
Yeah, exactly.
And
Well,
yet that love is not personal.
right.
It's the paradox of aware living, that we constantly are in a kind of a dance with the personal and that reality, or seeming reality, or apparent reality, and then the non-personal, which of course is what we are. And it's kind of like that snake and rope metaphor, which maybe most of us have heard, where it's getting dark and you're walking along and you see a snake on the road, and looking, you're alarmed, and then you gradually kind of come up and look a little closer and a little closer, and oh my God, it's a piece of rope.
yeah.
Yeah.
I literally had that happen when I was
Yeah.
10 years old. I was coming back from school and they're going across this thing was a snake. And I said, well, I'll just wait here for it to go across. And I must have waited for a half an hour or more before I went closer to see why it wasn't moving. I just let it go off into the bushes so that, I can walk by. And yeah, sure enough, it was just a rope lying there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we
Yeah,
live in.
I like to interject here and just
Yes, please, Philo.
and this is all rhetorical and for clarity, but in my case, love, it doesn't necessarily look like love all the time. For me, love is whatever is. And so I don't like to use the word love anymore because it's like using the word God.
Mm.
It has these deep connotations. So what is an example? I turn on the news and I see something happening in some part of the world that's terrible. And the human reaction is, no, that's hate. Hate is doing that. That's not love. And another human reaction is crying about that, being upset about that. And then the deep understanding, or the actual understanding, is just acceptance of what is. And so love, you could say that's love, you could say that's unconditional love, but what's arising is not what looks like that. And that can be very confusing for people when you're trying to explain. When you see a war zone and you say that's unconditional love arising as this war zone, people have a hard time with that. So, when we talked about this whole series of understanding or discovering what is in everyday living, that's a part of it. We live in a world that is full of contradictions, and we have to accept all of that as unconditional love, or what I would say is being arising. And being arising is just accepting. It's not stopping anything. It's not trying to stop anything. Everything is just happening, stopping and starting in their own time in being. And this is the dream that we have.
So we have appearances which can look all different ways. But there's only one awareness perceiving all those different appearances. The awareness isn't changed by any of the appearances. And settling into this non-dual view, we see that the appearance is awareness, and not just conditioned awareness, like the awareness is the appearance, but it's unconditional, which means it's what makes appearances possible. It depends. So I can't remember who was saying something, but this came up while you were speaking. Duality depends on non-duality. They are inseparable this instant in our own immediate present awareness, originating in the heart, which is always present now as goodness, self-aware love. And the appearances aren't separate. They are a reflection of one's unknowing selflessness now. Each of us is one, a wholeness, and has their own unique, valid path to the mystery. See, I picked up where I left off.
Yeah.
Thank you. Chitra, did you have a comment, or did I just misperceive? Anybody, thank you, that wanted to comment? Charlie, welcome. So we're talking about everyday living. Raja, you had a comment, and Shay will come to you too. Raja, could we unmute Raja, please?
Hi.
Hi, Razia.
Hi, James and Filo. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, it is so awesome listening to Peter and James and Philo and James again. Yeah, it's amazing that how your life kind of like changes. It's like you're looking at the same world, but it's so beautiful, you know? I mean, the things that used to like annoy you and make you angry and just don't anymore. It seems like, and there's this love, like you feel, you're looking at the other person and you see that they're just a part of you, you know, they just a different shape and things like that. But it's you expressing as this difference. And then you see the sameness all the time, you know, that's love, that we are the sameness. And then I was thinking about, like, you know, when you take someone who takes her gun and shoots someone, and we go, whoa, how did you do that, you know? And there's this reaction to it, you know, because I mean, why do you shoot someone? But if you look at it and then you say, there's no judgment there, because at that particular moment, what was the frame of mind that this person was in, you know? And then also you look at the conditionings that the person is. all these preconceptions, generations and generations of conditionings here. And this person takes the gun and shoots them. You know, where's the judgment? Yeah, so thanks. Thanks, James.
Thank you, Raja. Shay, we'll unmute you if you're still have something.
You can, everyone can unmute themselves.
Can they? Oh,
Yes,
unmute
yeah.
yourself, my friend. I thought he was in the control of all the mute. Jay, can you find your board? Or did you want to speak? No, still not muted. You're muted.
You have to click on the microphone on the bottom left.
The little red microphone. Is it red?
No, just
James is muted. You have to mute, unmute. Okay. We've never had that problem. It's
He obviously has a touch screen.
on
Do you
the
not see the
bottom.
microphone, Shay?
Philo, you might be able to unmute him.
Let me try that. Where's it gone?
Run the cursor across the bottom of your screen, Shay.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
There we go.
You hit it.
Yeah, for some reason I didn't have the control. I couldn't find the control. I'm looking at this on my phone, but I can't find the control. But I was given the option to unmute, and I was able by one of you guys, so I was able to do it. And I don't have questions.
Oh, well, I like your accent
Not
anyway.
now, anyway.
Welcome.
Nice to hear your voice.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Shay.
Yeah.
Residual reflections coming from anybody?
When we look at these things that happen that are catastrophic, seemingly catastrophic things, and yes, they feel that way. If you look closer and see what the results of these things happening, often there's an awakening that happens with that. I mean, my own life had a lot of suffering in it, a lot of trauma, especially in childhood. And that inevitably helped with awakening. It was just part of the whole thing. So I see that suffering is actually a gift that we have. When people come to me for healing, that's the first thing we work on is, why is this a gift? Like Ram Dass said, fierce grace. It seems so unlike a gift. It's like, if this is a gift, forget it. I don't want this gift. Can we accept that it's a gift and then try and find out why it's a gift? Because it seems like the opposite of a gift. Can we do that? And when we can do that, the healing begins by itself. It's something that we needed to have happen in our life in order for us to wake up, in order for us to be free of suffering. We needed suffering in order to be free of suffering. Right? And yeah, it's not pleasant. It's extremely unpleasant. But looking back over my life, everything was guiding to this. Everything was a gift. And at the time, did I see that? No. Hell no. I didn't see it at all. I was very confused. Like, why am I cursed? Why did this happen to me? How can I escape from this happening? But after seeing it enough, then it became welcome. Even in the moment of it happening, it's like, let's get to the bottom of it. Let's not waste this suffering. Let's not waste this pain by resisting it, by complaining about it. Let's open to it and learn what happened. And in big events, it's the same thing. Remember 9/11 happened in the US and everybody was like, oh, this is like, but people literally woke up because of that. They literally woke up and transformed their lives because they were shocked out of their little cocoon of a dream. It was just so traumatic. It shocked them out of it. Not everybody, for sure, just a few people, but a few people is enormous. A few people is wonderful. And that happens with almost every event that we can see that we call traumatic an event. I mean, I don't know, but I imagine in Gaza right now, there's amazing things that are happening within that incredible suffering. Children losing their parents, parents losing their children, starving to death, all that stuff, major suffering. This is the making of awakening. This is the making of a gift, you know? So that's the underlying perfection that I see in all of this. All of the things that happen, there's something there that is moving this oneness to wake up from the dream to itself. It needs this because it's really lost in the dream. Let's face it. It is, it's a good movie. It's completely a good movie. It's bought into the movie hook, line, and sinker, and it's relishing the drama and the suffering and all this stuff. It's very involved. It's not sitting there on the couch going, yeah, it's okay, but you know, not so good. No, it's just right there, right there, you know, right there. And when it wakes up to itself, it's like we don't wake up, right? This person, dream character, that's gone. It wakes up to itself. And all this suffering is a necessary ingredient. It's part of the perfection of the whole dream. It's perfectly imperfect, right? Nothing in the dream will ever be perfect. It's perfectly imperfect. It has to be. You can't have two things that are perfect, then it wouldn't be real. It wouldn't be what it is. Only this is perfect. Only this is unchanging. Everything in the dream is changing, changing, changing all the time. Only this is not changing. So there has to be that radical difference between the dream and between this. And there is, you know, it's a perfect thing. And when we can see suffering as the gift that it is, that changes everything. Sometimes we can get like, you know, pushed, you know, over the edge, like, well, that's a bit much. And then we can feel that for a little bit, go back into the dream and feel. But then if we look, because it's painful, we have to say, what's really happening? What's really going on here? And the only way we can ever find that answer is to go within, isn't it? Google's not going to help us. You know? I mean, I learned that because to go within, I got every answer that I've ever needed and somehow so quickly. But still, I would have a question about anything. And at first I would go to Google, and then I would go to experts, and then I would ask them, why did I keep doing that? So that I would be frustrated, so that I would see that that isn't the way. I had to do it to see that it wasn't the way. And then finally I would do what I call asking God, and I would ask and be quiet, and the answer would always come. And never what I would expect. Never what I would expect, always a surprise, but always with this resonance of this truth that is beyond thinking, beyond believing, beyond anything our mind can call truth, is this unchanging truth, always accompanied with that, you know? And so, I mean, after 20 years, why didn't I just like go to that all the time? Well, that would have made sense, but that's not how the dream acts in this way. That's not how it teaches this to let go. That's not how this go. And you're so right, James. Every single person, their path is uniquely perfect for them and uniquely like snowflakes, never the same. So we can get very confused by saying, oh, Yogananda did this, and, you know, Ramana did this, and Eckhart Tolle did this. Well, I should try and commit suicide so I can have his thing. Well, it's not for you. Not one of them has the same. And we get confused by seeing that and saying, I need to do this. Our way is the right way. So we take the resonance of those things and go, why am I feeling resonance? What's inside me that's resonant? That's the answer. And then go in there, shut the book, shut the teaching. I got the resonance. All right, what's it saying? It's in here. This is the teacher. This is the real teacher. The real guru is always the Sat Guru in us. We get confused by the outer guru, and some of them do want to have all that stuff and not point it back here. But the good ones will always point back. No, it's not me. It's here. This is just a reflection of you. That's all. So go in and find where the truth is, because it's always here. This is how God wakes up to itself. It can only do it in this way, in our own unbelievably unique, perfect way. It is so amazing. So the dream has these incredible pointers pointing to wake us up. It's not without that. If it was without that, that would be it, right? God would have the dream, no waking up. That's it. But that's not the purpose of the dream. The purpose of the dream is to eventually come back to waking up to what it is. So the dream is filled with these pointers, breadcrumbs. I call them the breadcrumbs scattered everywhere. And it's amazing when we see them, how we could have missed them our entire life. There were just every day, there were a million. How could we not get one? Well, that's the way it is.
I tend to pick mine up like this, for example. It's this beautiful rock that I found at Rajneeshpuram in 1980, 81. And it has a meaning which is totally outside anything of the known. So I just understand it as myself. This is just another form of my heart reflecting back to me so I can see clearly.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing? It's just filled with that. I think of, it's like we're we're looking for diamonds and we're walking in the street that's just littered with diamonds. There's nothing but diamonds in the street. And all we see is dog poop. There's no diamonds anywhere. It's just dog poop, dog poop, dog poop. But there's no dog poop. It's just diamonds.
It's
just diamonds
perfect
everywhere.
dog poop.
It's perfect, which is diamonds. Yes, it is.
Yeah. I often comment, or not often, but I have taken a lot of, I had a lot of suffering too. Probably all of us. Has anybody here not had a lot of suffering? Would you raise your hand?
That's right.
Without it, we wouldn't change. I've commented from time to time that if I'd have been successful, quote, in the things that I wanted and the ambitions that I had and the Lamborghini I dreamed about owning by the time I was 30 or something, all the stuff, you know. If I'd have been successful, I'd have been that lovely song, Comfortably Numb.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have become comfortably numb. Is that wonderful phrasing? And we can be very grateful for our suffering. I think
I actually did attain my goals as a filmmaker. I won all these international awards and stuff. And in the very first award that I'd won, which I worked so hard to get, and in my mind, the dream was I felt this was going to give me eternal happiness. I really believe that. And in the middle of making the acceptance speech, I had this enormous disillusionment when I realized it wasn't, and that's what I really wanted. So actually attaining those things, I think Eckhart Tolle said, there's two ways suffering happens: not getting what you want and getting what you want. And that was true. I got what I want. I had the huge house. I had like this beautiful wife that I adored, and all of it just ended up being suffering too, because it didn't get the end of dukkha. It didn't get the end of that seeking for something is still missing. Something is still missing, which we need. That suffering is what brings us in, finally, deeply in. First, it's spirituality and thoughts, and like, okay, that's not doing it either. I got to go deeper than that. I have to go deeper. And somehow we do. And the amazing thing is how this can happen without any intention whatsoever, which the first time it happened for me, there was nothing. I had a book by Yogananda called How to Know God. I was 22, and I'd had that for a few years. I kept it in my back pocket with me all the time. It was a little book. And I had Satchidananda's book on yoga, and I had a book on Raja Yoga about practices of meditation. Look at a candle flame until you can just see that. It was nothing, really. And suddenly, just one day out of nowhere, I woke up and there was no personal self. There was just the embodiment of love for 10 days. You know, it was like I had no preparation. I thought I was the second coming of Christ because I didn't know what else to say, right? People were healed around me. I thought, like, well, okay, I guess this is it. This is good. And then I went back into the dream again. Then I slept, and I was very upset about that. It's like I've been living in this bliss. Like, no, how? What happened? And that got me to try to look to you know, end up going into Zen and trying to find how to redo that thing, which was a huge mistake because, of course, this is the reality. If I'm trying to go back into something, that's not real. If I'm trying to go forward into something, that's not real either. And it was beautiful that nobody told me that it was always here, that that was just an experience of there. So I had to go through all these years of going through, of seeking. It was absolutely perfect and necessary. You know, it was just perfect and necessary. So it's amazing how these things happen when we don't, you know, just like, bam, what? Why? Because it's always here. That's why. It's always here. You know, sometimes it's just we're exhausted seeking, like Adyashanti was, right? Just exhausted seeking, exhausted meditating 12 hours a day. It's like, I'm just worn out. This is just too much. And at that moment, it came.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
When you
seems
stop
to me
looking,
that,
probably.
oh,
Filo.
okay. Um, for me, it's all dream, all of it. Even the so-called awakening or enlightenment. And there's something else. There's something else. So that's why we can, like, let's say, Peter, you had this moment or this moment of time, these 10 days of bliss and being Jesus, and then that kind of went away again. That to me is an indication that it's a dream. Anything that any experience that comes and goes is dream. So even the awake experience right now is still part of the coming and going of experience. And so I call this state, the awake state. For me, I'm a very vivid dreamer, and I often lucidly dream. And this awake state here, for me, is like a lucid dream. So the awakeness is here, the reality is here, just like in a lucid dream. But within that, the experiences are coming and going. So even the experience of enlightenment is part of that coming and going. And for me, the investigation in the everyday living is what is behind that. And that's the part where I feel we come to what I call the unspeakable.
Mm.
It's something that we all have it right now, but it can't be seen by the human being, by the mind, or even by being. I think being is still part of the dream. So beyond being, there's the unspeakable. And the analogy that I have for that is when we're dreaming at night and everything is real. We wake up from the dream, and that dream experience has completely disappeared, and all of the people in it, all of the situations completely disappeared. And I think the analogy here with this waking dream is that in the actual awakening from the dream, all this disappears.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the experience that I have in what I call samadhi, which is body, mind, world is not there. That's what they call sahaja samadhi, where the whole thing just disappears. There's only this, whatever it is, only this, whatever it is. But you don't function in the dream. The body doesn't function in the dream from that state because there isn't anything here. And then the sahaja samadhi is where you're lucidly dreaming, where you keep that, but the dream is back. So the body will go and do its thing and eat and get things and do things. I will say that experience that I had in my early 20s, it is exactly this. It is no different. Every time the opening happened, it's like an opening to what I am, and it's unchanging. Every time I've experienced it, there's never any change to it. That's why it's unchanging. It's like the repeated experience of not experiencing it and then going back to experiencing it again. The thing that stays is that has never changed. The depth of it, that's just the depth of the experience of it, but it itself has never changed in the slightest way ever. So there were these sort of windows or doors that sort of just opened up somehow, that was always here to what was always here. So the dream like fell apart. Somehow the dream just collapsed and suddenly there was just this. And then the dream came back through the habit of the mind, the habit of this engagement with people, like, Peter, how are you? Well, just that, like, oh, there's a Peter. Oh, okay. And now I'm stuck back in this. I think Ram Dass had this thing about what do you call it? Peopling or learning to be somebody, somebody practice. I'm somebody practicing. So I started off without being somebody, and then my parents gave me a name and they talked to me. So I started my somebody practice, and then I got a career, and then I did this and that, got married or whatever. And then I'm a father, I'm a somebody. So I'm constantly somebodying. And I find most conversations are somebodying, are reinforcing the somebody. Like, hey, how was your day? Oh, my day was good or bad or whatever. Let me tell you about my day. And you're somebodying. We're making the somebody. We're building up the somebody and reflecting back. And now let me build up the somebody for you. But that's why nobody is a good way of doing this. But of course, this is not nobody. It's not nobody. It's not somebody. It's not everybody. There's nothing that we can say about what this is. But nobody is a good practice to help us let go of the somebodyness, because that's what we're stuck with. We're stuck with a somebodyness. So as Thich Nhat Hanh called it, all spiritual practices are a form of medicine. Once the medicine has been effective, you don't keep the medicine, you get rid of it, because otherwise it'll become a poison. Now you've let go of the somebody, but you don't want to be attached to the nobody either. So it's like, yeah, nobody did its work. Okay, thank you very much. And now what's there? Not somebody, like neti neti, which is the perfect way of describing it. Not this, not that, not somebody, not nobody, not everybody, not somewhere in between that, not anything. Then what? Exactly. Then what?
So there's no knowledge to be gained, no knowing to be had.
Not to be had. No.
Yeah.
But there is knowing within this.
Yes.
There is vast knowing within this, but not something that we're going to be able to say anything about or do it. It's much more than that. It's too much. Can this little finite mind fit the infinite into it? How would that be possible? It doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
But I like, Filo, your dream thing. That's something that the Tibetans have done a lot. They're very connected to the afterlife thing, which they get through dreams, and very much to the dreams, and then looking at this life and saying, this is a dream too. That's a dream. This is a dream. So there's a practice of walking through the waking dream and acknowledging that everything we're seeing is a dream, just like the sleeping dream is, which can help free you and bring you more into that state. I mean, I experience this now, so I don't need to do that, but I can see the value of that. You know, I had an amazing experience I did years ago. I used to practice this don't know mind. One of my Zen teachers, Sansanim, was the don't know mind thing. And so I took it a little further, and I would look at objects and just say, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. So I was literally taking away all the knowledge in my mind and sort of putting it aside until I reached a place where there was nothing. And then I would see the object with just an awe and reverence of whatever the heck this thing was. It was amazing. So I liked doing that. So I kept doing it with nature in the woods. And one day I was actually sitting on the toilet and I thought, like, well, there's a faucet. Let me do it with the faucet. So I just eliminated everything that would have to do with it. Chrome, shiny, metal, faucet, all those things. And it disappeared. There was just the background. All the other stuff was there, but not that. And as soon as the thought shiny or chrome or anything came in, it was right there again. And that was teaching me how my mind was making these things, and that I literally couldn't see them without some knowledge of what it is, right? It was actually making the world. And so I did that for, I don't know, maybe a year or so. I would practice with different things until it would disappear and then it would come back again, because I'd been working on Don't Know Mind for years. So my mind was attuned to being able to do that, to be able to just let go, because it's really nice to see things. Like Krishnamurti said, when a child first sees a tree, he really sees a tree. And once he learns the word tree, he can't see the tree anymore. And to put it more, if he ended up becoming a botanist and had a PhD in this one tree, he would be completely unable to see the tree. Because what is this thing? It's everything. It's the universe. It's everything. And the child just feels that the awe is like, oh, wow. Yeah, that's how everything is. Oh, wow. Right? And once we think we know, oh, wow is gone. I think we did as a human population at one point had awe. I don't think in our sophisticated culture we have much awe anymore. We've lost that. And that's important because we're not really seeing anything if we don't have that experience of just awe, just wow. Yeah. Then we're seeing it, then we're present, then it's like there. We're back where the child was that had the inner knowing, was still alive in it. And we've hidden that. We've put layers of curtains and blockages and bricks and everything over the inner knowing. And we just have this illusion of our thoughts, this limited illusion of thoughts, this abstract way of perceiving. So to be, then we see, right? That's why it's so awesome to be, just to be. It's like everything is this. What is it? I have no idea. And it's so wonderful to not know. It's so freeing to not know, which the mind is completely against. And we're conditioned like, well, then I'll be a moron. I'll be an idiot. No, not knowing is an insult, right? It's like, no, you don't know anything. You know nothing, right? This is like an insult. Right. It's terrible. When in fact, it's the greatest thing we can experience. We can't know anything until we experience not knowing. It's the only time true knowing can come forward. It's so funny how the dream is. It's like, we're purposely becoming more and more ignorant while we gain all this knowledge.
Yeah. We're living in paradox, huh?
Yeah. And paradise without knowing it.
Yeah, and paradise. Paradox is paradise.
Yeah. I do love quantum physics because quantum physics is it's like a koan. They come up with these things and they go, what? This makes no sense. I can't understand it. And there's even some things, I think the Swedish consult that they had where they said, we're just not going to talk about these certain things. We're not going to talk about them anymore because they're koans, right? They leave us in this, but still a number of quantum physics have really opened up to Eastern spirituality because of this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and they have gone further than anybody in this. It's pointing to this. Of course, they'll never get there because they're still somehow thinking there's an objective reality here, right? And it
Yeah.
isn't. It's all subjective.
There's no there.
There's no there, right? Exactly. But they're really finding that out in these extraordinary ways scientifically, which is very, I don't know. I think it's wonderful. And they're scientists, so they should be looking for truth. And there's some beauty in that, even though they'll never get there. You know, just the act of being curious is enough. And I wonder how many people have actually had awakenings from really thinking about what they've found, really thinking about what they've explored, and thinking about the fact that they don't know, you know, trying to look in something deeper.
Yeah.
Donald Hoffman is a scientist who's looking into consciousness of all things. How wonderful,
Yeah.
you know. And he's finally he said, I'm going to do this in a completely scientific, objective way with only science. And the most recent thing I read, he said, well, actually 50% has to be meditation. And I think eventually he'll see, no, it's really more like 100%.
100%.
Yeah, exactly. But he's slowly getting there as a very, you know, strict scientist. He's slowly moving his way into that real. And if he goes far enough, and if his meditation goes deep enough, he will. You know, he'll see like, oh, it's this. What is it? Donald Hoffman, I have no idea.
There you go.
It is.
We end up where we started.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to wrap up. We're a little over, and I'm happy to go forever. It seems, Peter, so much. Really enjoy everything that you're saying, and
Thank you, James.
the being behind it is where